I'm Károly Nagy, Deputy Editor-in-Chief and host of Trend FM. You're about to see and hear a 2-hour discussion on how thinking about the environment and local initiatives has changed, where the world of ecology and people's attitudes towards it are going, and how we think about it socially and economically. This discussion is organized as part of the RurALL project. A survey was carried out in several countries, including Hungary, in Komárom-Esztergom County in particular, to find out what people know about the current ecological processes and how they feel about them. Well, unfortunately, I have to say that the results of the survey are not very encouraging. So, we have invited 5 experts, 5 guests to talk about this and how we can change this attitude.
Itt van velünk a Kék Központban egyébként.
At the Contemporary Architecture Center, we have Christina Chapo from Deep Adaptation. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Levente Pribeli, who's a human ecologist. Alexandra Köves from the Corvinus University, Gábor Vasárus, and also Bálint Fogács, who's a researcher in cognitive psychology. So, without any further ado, let's start this discussion. As we sometimes say, we can drop a rock into the lake. About a month ago, Donald Trump started as a president. Does this mean a change in terms of ecology thinking? Where are we in this regard? Who would like to start? Perhaps Gábor Vasárus. Well, I think this hasn't changed too much, the Trump administration so far. Obviously, we know that he wants to cancel US participation in various organizations. The US has not complied with the Paris Convention, and we understand that this has never worked and it had a lot of problems and hiccups. Let me give you a very simple example of why this did not work. For example, in the case of the US, it was very important that the quota did not have to include the army's figures. Found data from 2017, which was a peace year for the US, and the harmful emission of the US Army was more than Hungary and Estonia combined. And the same applied to China, which had a higher harmful emission than Greece and another country. And when this Paris Treaty was signed, it was not a serious initiative because the biggest emitter was not a part of this. And if they do not subscribe to it, then why would others comply with the requirements? So these will not just replace the existing systems, but so when oil was introduced as a fuel, it didn't mean that we stopped using coal. And the same applies to other resources. Let me hold this mic, and please use the other mic as a mobile one. So the question was centered around President Trump. Anyone else to contribute? I agree with what Gábor said regarding other governments. No government took this so seriously. The core logic of our social operation is against us facing the challenges of climate change. And ennek a mítosznak a mentén működő gazdaság. When we have economies that are run according to this myth, and no, it doesn't matter which political party you will ask. they all hold this as unquestionable. This optimism that technology will solve all our problems without us having to do something differently at a systemic level, then this won't give us answers. And it seems that President Trump is making the most of it. It will be so clear. Perhaps my version is a bit more optimistic, but perhaps this will demonstrate to all that we need to start into a more progressive direction to find a meaningful answer to this. Levente Pribeli would like to add something. Perhaps Donald Trump has a stronger PR, but Gábor Vasárus mentioned that coal mining had an increasing ratio in China. I'm the biodiversity campaigner for Greenpeace Hungary, and I wanted to mention this because I think it's important. Before our panel discussion, we had a discussion with Alexandra, and I think we need to make it clear that it's really horrific what's going on. I think we will realize that what has been going on so far was really bad, and we will realize that it's really untenable. I remember one of my friends said that Trump demonstrated that if there is common will, we can rewrite the rules of the world. And we can see that he cancels things that no one would have ever thought that they could be changed. And this is all going into a very wrong direction. It causes a lot of damage in social and ecological terms. And all this at a moment when the climate crisis is really deep. And the fact that the biodiversity is really deteriorating. And this is just one part of the problem. We would need different answers that would bring us back to normality. But where we'll be at that moment when we will get back to normality? Christina Chapo from Deep Adaptation, she's a volunteer of this international organization. What is normality? It is often discussed by your group. What is your opinion at Deep Adaptation about Trump's appearance? I think this is part of a trend when threats increase. You can see that the demand for an authoritarian leader is increasing, and together with the general deterioration of the situation and the general anxiety, and this is not only the case in the US, but in other countries, in parallel with this myth about freedom and the myth about growth, that many people just come to realize now that these demands are counterproductive, or these needs. We expected that the world would become a better place and the generations coming after us would have a better situation, but this is far from being the case. Now, it's protectionism, it's isolationism, and it has an impact, a global impact, and it affects not only the US, but also Hungary and Europe. So many people are getting worried. Let's continue with Bálint Forgács. The fact that it's getting worse, to repeat what Christina has just said, is it because only Trump, or we want to blame him, we want to use him as a scapegoat, because he's embodying everything that all people are afraid of? And can we see the signs of change in society, in social movements or in behaviors? Or it's too early to say? Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. I wouldn't dare to say that. I I'd rather stay in my own area. I have only impression-based answers. I agree that from a lot of perspectives, it has just demonstrated that the Paris Treaty was not a living convention. We had a lot of illusions about it. President Obama increased oil mining, and there were no radical steps made. So those who are saying that something should be done about this, they did not really make any meaningful effort. So this is some kind of a moment of truth, but which truth? This is the question, and this is what I want to talk about. With President Trump in the power now, social media
bizonytalan szabályozása is megszűnőben van, vagy megszűnni látszik.
The uncertain regulations of social media is being discontinued as X, in the same way as X, or formerly Twitter, can change, and Facebook can also change. So there's a process of relativization going on, which is being detached from reality. And we also need to talk about the key topics of the public discussion. Is it about fictitious things or real things? And the fact that Trump is the president shows that politics is about fictitious things on many times, and sometimes it doesn't have real contact with reality.
Növekedést felmutatni, voltak olyan időszakai, ez egy szűk.
There were certain periods in the history of the world, in global history, about 30 years after the Second World War, countries had to be rebuilt from scratch, half of Europe. So it's easy to achieve growth in this way. But due to regulations, because of the war and because of tycoons and the regulations of tycoons and oligarchs, now we see the signs of society which looks like feudalism, shows the signs of feudalism, and we seem to get back to that in its large structures. I'm just saying that as a silent observer from the edge of the pitch. This high level of concentration of capital and concentration of power and the topics of public discussion and the messages that are heavily used, and Trump uses very strong and powerful messages, these are being concentrated in a limited number of hands, and this will happen in the world. Just a short side question. When it comes to speaking about silent observers, you can see Elon Musk, who is using social media when he launched interesting processes. One more thing about Trump. In Europe, we talk about Green Deal, but in the US, we talk about Green Land. Is it going to be an iconic moment when they will start oil production in Greenland to make things even worse? What do you think about that? Anyone can add, anyone can contribute. Just when you have a thought, please share. I think it was just a buzzword that he used, Greenland. He just jumped some ideas when it comes to politicians, you have to pay attention to what he's doing, not what he's saying. And it's especially true about Mr. Trump or President Trump. I think Canadian and UK companies will also be present when production will start.
Gyakorlatilag mind a három mutatók előtt gyakorlatilag egyfajta ilyen rakománykultusz alakult ki. Ugye ennek volt egy jelképe, ez a 1,5 fok, ami most ugye elszállt, vagy akár maga az egyezmény.
We seem to let the 1.5 degree go. We thought that there would be a tech magician like Elon Musk who will put down some technology and help us not to face the problem of climate change. But we have to face it without changing our lifestyle. We cannot do anything about it. So we can mention a lot of examples. I don't know this term, the cult of shipment comes at the end of the Second World War. The US Army replenished the supplies to troops that were fighting in the Pacific, and they started to build fake or mock airplanes and cargo cults. This is the right term. Spending €2, we can save 400 grams of CO2, but €2 costs 800 grams of CO2. So we save 20% by changing the number plate on the car. If you have green number plate, but you use a SUV, a large SUV, it's greenwashing. But I think the biggest problem here is that science also joined this cargo cult. You found a lot of articles about it, that technology will solve a lot of things, and carbon neutrality can be achieved when a solar panel is produced, and we did not start to use it. 41 grams of carbon dioxide is generated without when it's not installed.
Yes, I believe. I think some parts of it were the parts that's supporting green growth, because green growth is a myth. It doesn't exist, because green growth says that all these issues will be solved by technology. And this example from Greenland or Ukraine, saying that Ukraine will be saved if it gives lithium to the US, it all shows that this electrification process has major obstacles, and it's a dead-end street. Technology will never solve these issues, and coal mining has peaked out. It is at very high level, and combined with this, so when we used all this coal, we also had lots of renewable energy produced. These two were combined because new technology creates a hunger for capacity. So when you have these nice objectives for Green Deal and you are talking about green growth, it just covers the issue. It gives you the illusion that you can use technology to solve the issues and you don't have to change your lifestyle. It is not true. And this is what we have to face now. And there is major pressure on Europe because all past environmental norms should be put aside to improve European competitiveness. This ambition shows that this story is false. It is not true. When you talk about electric engines, and well, we mentioned the word green, and I associate it to Greenpeace. What is your opinion? When we move to renewable energies, does this really generate a higher energy demand, or you have a more optimistic view about that? I try to respond to 2 or 3 things that have been mentioned by the other panelists. I think we did not believe these myths. We have to know that there is a dominant paradigm, there is an existing social economic system for which we try to develop alternatives, but these alternatives were not visible, and no action was taken at a global level. But what I want to say is that it is a problem that in science these alternative ways of thinking were present in science, and science is closely related to the social system, to the economic system, and these concepts appeared at this level. And I want to stress this because we have to know that this whole thing is very diverse. And responding to Alexandra, this electrification is a dead-end street. I strongly agree that it is a dead-end street the way we do it now, but I still think that it is a direction that can be an important direction and can change things. I think fossil sources have to be driven out, and we have to change social demand. What you said was that this electrification increased their hunger for energy. I think this demand for energy was there. It was rooted in this social and economic system, and I don't think that new technologies contributed to increase this. Well, electric vehicles, for example, Greenpeace takes action to combat the environmental impact of new cars. I think we should move to renewable sources of energy. And Green Deal, when it was first discussed, it was entered the agenda and became part of public speech. It was called the Green Growth Strategy of the European Union. And Alexandra also said that we take a step back in our former objectives. I think it is a disappointing situation that we are taking a step back and we are reducing our green goals, our green objectives and green targets, and the importing of pesticides, for example, and in the destruction of forests. So what I want to say is that all these processes show that instead of reaching former milestones, now everything has turned upside down and we are regressing rather than progressing. And I think that we have to identify the challenges and the obstacles, and we have to try to fight them and move forward. In Europe, we have some growth issues right now, and the political and economic decision makers are talking about this, which is not a disaster from an ecological point of view, but let's finish this round and then we will move to the next question. Just one more comment to this. I think if you have a growth-centric system, then you are missing growth. But if we had created a different system which was not centered around growth, then this issue could be viewed from a very different perspective. So, should we accept the current situation that your society is built on, your organization is built on, and continue the way where we are now, or try to take local action or
Én egy kicsit az előttem szólókhoz szeretnék kapcsolódni, mert itt nagyon
I'd like to refer back to the previous panelists who mentioned that we have to find a solution to these issues. And well, climate change is a problem. If life goes on as it was, it is common knowledge since the 1970s. We had about 50 years to take meaningful action. And let me add two more buzzwords. One is mitigation, the second is adaptation. And in many cases, well, mitigation aims to manage these issues and find solutions. Adaptation is about adapting to the new situation, because the climate change won't wait for us to catch up with it and mitigate it. And these two buzzwords very often are put in conflict, and they appear as two different paths, adaptation and mitigation. And those who support adaptation have given up. And these are just misunderstandings, because mitigation, whatever we do to reduce the destruction, is very important. Mitigation is important, but if we focus on mitigation and we don't make it clear that 50 years have passed and the disaster was expected to happen in 60 years now, so we have 10 years to take action before the disaster. The latest technology available, this fusion technologies, have been available for 40 years. And if you want to use this technology, it will take decades. So I think adaptation is also important. You have to adapt to the changed condition, to the changed circumstances. So, but I think mitigation is more like firefighting now, just to try to minimize the negative impacts. I think we don't even try to fight the fire. We rather put more petrol on the fire, because if we put dark red tiling on the pavements in the streets of our cities, when we use these colors, we use large dark green or dark red, which are bad for the urban climate. Well, what I wanted to say, that it makes sense to find new technologies that can help us reduce the damage caused. But we don't think that it will save us, it will save the world, or that they will stop the processes that are already underway. I think we should give the floor to Bálint Forgács, because we had a discussion about the apathy that was created about climate change and climate action, and there was a long discussion where the conclusion was that we don't use the right words to reach the psychological barrier to change. So we shouldn't say global warming, because it just does not ring the alarm bell, because warming seems to be a very slow process taking long decades. So would we be able to break this psychological barrier if we change our words, change our expressions to more alarming ones? I think words can have an impact, but if you use strong words, they should also be very targeted, and we should use them very precisely and consciously, responsibly. And in this sense, there are many people who didn't like the article that I wrote about this issue, about climate language, criticism, that warmth is a nice word, is a positive word that should be changed to something else. we should use overheating or boiling, which have more negative connotations, and we have many similar terms that can be used in a euphemistic way. And if we want to raise public awareness and we want to convey the message, we need to use stronger words. It is necessary to show people the worst case scenarios that we have, or a greenhouse effect. Greenhouse is a nice fragile structure, and it was created to capture heat, and and the atmosphere works as a greenhouse anyway. And similar euphemistic terms are. So we have many soft words, nice words around this topic. And the warming up is one of the best examples, I think. So I believe that if we change the words and we talk about climate suicide and overheating of the planet, these words can raise more awareness. And we live in a world where people have to be, people's attention has to be captured. And well, think about advertisements. We have to fight this clutter. We have to fight for people's attention because they are bombarded by social media. They are bombarded by messages trying to capture attention on digital interfaces, and we have to try to overcome this clutter, overcome all this noise to reach people. So when the people pay attention to you and you capture people's attention, then you have to be able to tell them more than that, well, just saying that we are in trouble, there is big trouble and we have to do something about it. So the content has to be more carefully developed to convey the message. Climate scientists sometimes trying to use and northern currents, the AIM current, and the resulting climatic changes. And when he is talking about this negative scenario, then he finishes with saying that it is very bad. It is bad news. But he didn't say that it will just prevent us from doing any agricultural work in the future. So there is soft talk, there are these soft words, and there are many suggestions and recommendations. But the overall message to society is that we need to talk about it. That's it, full stop. We have to speak stronger, to raise people's attention and call them to action. And let me refer back to the other panelists who said that social action and public speech are strongly related. So I think public thinking, or Trump and Elon Musk and social media, it shows the recklessness of some actors, and those who have a message to convey, who have something to say, have to step up, and they have a huge responsibility to communicate effectively. And I don't want to be elitist, but those who can attend a roundtable discussion like this during the day, or can click on a link, who don't work or toil day and night to make ends meet, because most people work very hard to earn a living. So those who have the opportunity to join this discussion, and so I just want wanted to highlight the importance of this, that we should start a discussion on real action, on meaningful action that we can take. Techno-optimism, for example, is very naive. I attended a workshop, a climate workshop, and I worked with a Greek chemistry professor during that workshop, and he put some plans on the table about power plants, oil-based power plants, or plants, about an equipment that can be attached to the tires of polluting plants, including power plants, that can convert carbon and to make it more environmentally friendly. So when we talk about green technology, you always think about solar panels and such solutions, but well, you have to open a new slate and start redesigning everything. And well, we have to find out how to communicate more effectively, to convey the message to people so that they would be willing and ready take radical action against climate change. Just before Alexandra continues, well, I think that carbon emission is also a soft word for me. Just back to solutions, because we were discussing the ways to reach a solution to these issues. I think it is very dangerous that we are thinking along linear lines about these processes, and we expect somebody to come, to scientists and researchers, to give up a strategic roadmap and say that if we follow, we will overcome the challenges, and the same applies to mitigation and adaptation. But I think reality is that we don't have the faintest idea what is going to happen. These systems are just too complex to be able to calculate the path we are going to take. And if we intervene and we tamper with these systems, we don't know what the end results will be. So if we are waiting to find perfect models or develop perfect scenarios about the actions to take to reach the desired goal, then we can wait until the end of the world, because we will never have a perfect solution. We will never have a perfect option. There are many recommendations. There are many proposed solutions. Well, carbon capture that you are talking about, I think in itself it is a problematic, because it says that if we attach this equipment to the tower of plants, then we can just sit back and relax and do nothing else. So I think it is a dangerous approach. We can use this solution, but it has to be applied carefully, and first decide whether this plant really does have to exist and operate.
And these solutions that are about mitigation, or adaptation related to unpreventable problems. So we should do certain steps and look at how our big systems respond to that. But obviously we need to start doing something to achieve change. So I don't agree with this, that we should write down what will happen, but we have no idea. So we should start making steps. We do know about the root cause of the problems, but we did not manage to exert an impact on the systems of interests. And one last sentence, I don't think we are approaching feudalism, but the extreme version of capitalism. Based on all history research, these research show that feudalism was a more egalitarian system when it comes to access to resources or life quality. It was much better than what we are having today. Gábor Vasáros, and we will move to Levente again. So Gab, I'd like to respond to almost all panelists. I agree with this. This cargo cart is really applicable. But photovoltaic panels, solar panels are an interesting thing. Here's the German transition, green transition, and we're saying that they are successful. But now they emit twice as many CO2 as Hungary when generating 1 kilowatt of energy. When it's not sunny, so during the night and in cloudy periods, they are using gas turbines to make up for the gap. So the German network is more environmentally unfriendly than the Hungarian one. A good example for cargo cult is everyone was clapping their hands like kindergarten children. We saved the world, but the public utility network is using our contribution and paying some people to use unnecessarily generated power. So, for example, it happened that in Germany, they switched on the defrost system in the summer of the railway. So the most important message here is that from the CO2 generation, we have such a fossil-based system that we cannot stop this because startup companies are trying to crowdsource money for these projects, but we should take a cost-benefit analysis on this. I can't tell you the figures, but a cargo ship is using 20,000 liters of oil. So 100,000 tons of ship should have a lot of batteries to be sustainable. And even if you take the most state-of-the-art battery, you would need 600. So we are not able to replace fossil resources. We have to downgrade, we have to scale down fossil systems. A colleague of ours, a physician, has a physicist has a good video about it. For example, nuclear power is brought back in the EU based on a taxonomy regulation. It was the result of the realization of the fact that solar power can work only when in sunny intervals. And we can use smart transformers, but they are very costly. And let's say Szeged has 100 such transformers, but in the next 300 years, they couldn't spend on anything else if they had to introduce these smart transformers, because they are so costly. So these are just pseudo solutions, not real solutions. It's good to collect votes in campaigns, but from a real climate mitigation perspective, they are not working. We have to look at the social and global and economic processes. I heard a good idea from a farmer in the Great Plains of Hungary. We shouldn't talk about climate change. We should talk about the deterioration of the soil or the destruction of the soil, because it's a good idea. And we should also talk about water resources, which are very limited in Hungary. Levente. I didn't want to use the German example and these other solutions that was mentioned by Bálint, but I was going to explain that without rearranging our social needs and demands, they won't provide a solution. But if we rearrange our needs and we understand that we need to stop growth, we can use solar powers in a more limited manner. It's really a bad idea to install PV panels on grassland rather than on buildings or concrete buildings. The agro-photovoltaic systems is a good solution, but I don't want to discuss it now. But I think it's really absurd that we are installing these PV panels in meadows and fields. We have to understand that power will not be available because of weather conditions. We should try to find storage solutions. We should use geothermal solutions. But the key thing is that not a single solution must solve our problems, but we need several technology solutions that complement each other in time, seasonally and day-wise. I'm not saying that wind and solar will be enough, but it can help solve the problem partly. We have high amount of power that is available, and at a social level it's cheap. At an individual level it's not cheap because there's energy poverty, but compared to the fact that we can cause a lot of damage with 1 unit of power, and from that regard it's cheaper. Overall, a real solution could be, say, start thinking about this consumer culture, the huge amount of energy needed for that. We shouldn't transport avocado here from so distant countries. And these tankers, the use of tankers, we should stop using these transport solutions. There's the demand side management, the term demand side management, also in electricity. With a flexible changing of electricity prices, we can change the timing of things. Say, when the power is available, we should do the consumption part at that time. We might not be able to generate so much power, but priorities are important. I'm not saying that anything else can be more important than food production, but in many cases we could generate less, much less. And I haven't even touched upon luxury consumption, which is also a social justice question, because only a limited number of people consume so much. Let's start a new round with Christina, who mentioned, and we mentioned this term, rearranging of needs. Can we all accept, and please respond to that, can it say that we rearrange our needs and will not go out in the night to a bar or to have a drink, but let's stay home and let's sleep? Or we should not keep shops and supermarkets open on Sundays. When the political change just happened in the early 90s in Hungary, that was just natural. So could we rearrange our needs and consumption needs, especially by shifting our habits? When the sun goes down, you shouldn't watch streaming channels or use electricity, but have sleep, a good night's sleep. Before answering this, let me touch upon these solutions that were mentioned or proposed. Whenever I hear about such solutions, proposed solutions, and people saying that there are solutions, but we just don't have the political will and economic will, I absolutely agree with Alexandra. We don't know when, we don't know how, but many people agree that we cannot continue as we live today, simply because there is a physical limitation.
változtatni rohadt nehéz. Heteket, hónapokat igényel, folyamatos odafigyelést. És akkor itt jön be az is, hogy a Trump és az autoritár válaszok. Tehát nagyon sokan
authoritarian answers like Trump. If we cannot regulate the rich, then the political powers should make some change. And this explains why we have President Trump again. But people will not forego the high quality of life that they are socialized in. There was a promise from previous generations, I will work so hard to make the life of my children easier. And from that moment, it's an expectation. But we won't be able to tell our children that I worked hard so you could have a better life. My child could say that, well, we ruined our planet. We should admit that first. And there's a generation gap. We have the youngsters who are left alone in this. There's the elderly generation who have remorse and who feel guilt, and they cannot face it. So they don't dare to face it, and the majority of the society doesn't dare to face this, and it's totally understandable, but this will not help solve the problem. We're talking about resources, natural resources, human resources, but somewhere we forget that we have this single planet. This is the only planet where life is possible. And this is our home. And the biggest sin of this culture is that we lost our connectedness with nature and with each other. If I'm still part of nature, I won't be able to continue this. Without this paradigm shift, without rebuilding this connectedness, no matter what technologies we invent, what solutions we think about, we will regenerate these problems while using the resources. So what are the things that we could forego? Most people can't give up using their smartphones. They need to look at it every second minute. Let's try to find solutions. Or if there are no solutions, let's talk about that. So what are the things that we could give up?
Az embereket arról próbáljuk, tehát hogy maga az a kommunikációs stílus, hogy erről
the style of communication that you have to give up this and forego that. This in itself generates a sense of loss, and everyone wants to keep what he or she has. But if we can say that the system that we built up is as sick as it is, and we should try to build a healthier system, which is better for all. I think that would be more efficient as a message than convincing people to stop something or stop doing something or giving up something. So maybe this is the obstacle, this communication style that we're communicating or stressing the give up part. I absolutely agree with this, especially the last bit. I can't remember how you said, but you said that rearrangement of needs and giving up habits is difficult. But the key thing here is to emphasize our link to the nature. And we need mindset change. And it's not easy, but this can bring with it changes in our habits. I don't think we should change all our bad habits at once, but we should try to find the single most important link. I think I have a smartphone,
from an ecological viewpoint, I think that it's a paranoid situation. But in today's society, it's not a sin to have a smartphone. But what is not good is to replace them every year, every second year, or buy a new one. We are not saying that we should give up using smartphones. We should make it clear. Or we don't have to stop watching television in the night. The structure should be rearranged. We should concentrate on offline activities. And we don't say that we should stop such things for good. So I think it's really a key to achieve this, and it's part of this cultural change. But it's also a part of the social structure. When we talk about these needs, it's as if these needs are coming from within. A few minutes ago, we talked about ads, and I thought about it. This can have unexpected effect. But if we had a more stringent regulation on ads, advertisements, not to let them spur high consumption. Hogyha ezekkel tudnánk valamit kezdeni, akkor nem azon kéne gondolkodni, hogy tiltjuk be a telefont az embereknek, és hogy igazából ennyit akartam itt főleg kihangsúlyozni, hogy szerintem ez nagyon-nagyon fontos. What I wanted to emphasize. So there are many small things that could be changed, and this is referred to as a leverage point. The leverage points, these paradigms in our structures that can bring about major change. Alexandra was going to add something. Yeah, I think I can respond to that. Ecological economics is based on this tenet that the function of economy is to provide an acceptable quality of life for all within the availability of resources. But it's a tall order. We talk about good quality of life. What is the part in this good quality of life that is based on energy flow and material flow? I think Bálint understands this the most. There's a
javakon keresztül tudunk kielégíteni. Tehát az, hogy hogyan éljük meg a jó életet, mit jelent nekünk a jó élet,
how we define good quality of life is important. I agree with the narrative around it. This focused communication on giving up is stemming from the fact that human needs and human demands are unlimited and there's scarcity everywhere. If we start to believe that human needs are not unlimited, there is a certain point where you can be happy and you don't need more. Because if you have more, then you won't feel okay. And if you start to believe that Mother Nature is really generous, we always talk about sustainability and environmental protection as if ecological sustainability would be at a very small level. It's just that we use energy and materials on a lot of stupid things that could be saved.
Before Gabor continues, when I was talking about mobile phones, I was thinking that everybody just was pushing their smartphones rather than paying attention to their environment So this is what I meant by using our mobile phones. I think, well, it is similar to the stages of processing grief. There is a phase of denial, and then there is a phase of bargaining, and while reaching the stage when you face the problem, well, it takes a time. When you have to reduce consumption, people think that they have to sacrifice their cars, they have to sacrifice their mobile phones. Well, the problem is not with ordinary people, but with billionaires who even go to parties by plane. So the vast majority of consumption is generated by the top 10% of society. It is their consumption that has to be reduced first. I just wanted to clarify, because this is a major misunderstanding. But everybody can take action. When you move a flat, you realize that a high percentage of your belongings are simply unnecessary. And you have to face this. If you don't buy gadgets from internet, unnecessary gadgets from internet websites, then you can already reduce your carbon footprint. You need to know that marketing reached a new level in the 1970s because they wanted to find new tools to boost growth. And today, marketing works is that you're brainwashed from the age of 15 when you get your first branded sneaker produced using child labor. Then children can feel more valuable in the school, or and by the age of 15, people are made happy by material goods, and this is the result of marketing. I think marketing has to be regulated somehow, because marketing makes you brainwashed. Just referring back to cars, when a car is advertised, then you would say that you can buy a car. If you buy a car, you can sit in the rush hours for 3 hours, because if you buy a car, you buy sitting in the rush hour for yourself, because you can use public transport, and then there would be no rush hour, there would be traffic jam. So I want to point this out. Just think back to the Second World War, when they used these old trucks. They were fully equipped trucks, military trucks, and they were smaller than an SUV used today. So these are the problems that we need to solve. When we say that you consume less, then we don't necessarily say that you shouldn't buy a car, but you should not buy a big SUV. Or if you live in the car, why use your car at all? I live in Szeged. I never use my car. I use my scooter, and I can say that in Szeged, where I live, from one side of the city to the other side, I get faster, 15 minutes faster than a car. So when I switched from car to my scooter, one time I reduced the time I spent with daily traffic. And this is what you have to tell people if they were not brainwashed by marketing. Because, well, I think we shouldn't call these people on TikTok and Instagram as influencers. They are marketing people rather than influencers, and they persuade young people that they will be cool if they fly to Madeira in Spain. Well, if you want to visit a Mediterranean city, you can travel to page visit the Mediterranean city located in Hungary. So this is what we have to do. Well, if you want to reduce consumption, it does not necessarily mean that you have to give up your comfort. You just sacrifice some unnecessary things, or stop doing some unnecessary things, or stop buying unnecessary items that you don't really need. And with electric vehicles, they won't replace traditional cars. Well, in Norway, everybody has an electric vehicle, an electric car as a second car, and they have their traditional engine cars too. How can you influence people through? Well, you won't be able to change marketing people and use different words and use a different language. And I wanted to say is that it is not the marketing people's task to talk about these things. This is social responsibility, and it is the responsibility of the experts. And you can address this marketing issue at a different level, at the level of legal regulations. And I wanted to reflect so I didn't want to promote carbon capture. It is very far from me. Carbon capture is included in climate models, and they say that it would extract the carbon from the atmosphere, which it doesn't work. I just wanted to provide some additional information. For some plants, carbon capture can work and can be effective, and for other types of plants, it won't work. So what I wanted to say that there are many small interventions that can be used to improve the situation. And for this, well, a few years ago, the president of the UN said that he asked all companies to make a transition, and many companies say that they have made a transition and they are already environmentally friendly. But what transition are we talking about? Their emission has not reduced it at all. And I think sacrifice, emissions, scarcity, loss, this kind of naive economic thinking, this is also a framing problem. And it is based on an obsolete social approach or social view. It is based in the post-Second World War era, when we had a major growth period. Now that 50% of the global emissions is generated by the top 10% of the society, luxury consumption, multiple houses, multiple cars, multiple vehicles, and social structure has changed a lot over the year. This is what I wanted to refer to when using this feudalistic expression. The wild capitalism resulted in a capital concentration, and it is similar to the feudalistic system when you have aristocrats on the top of the society who shape their own rules to regulate social processes. Because in a democratic system, you don't have aristocrats, but the structure, today's structure, is more similar to a feudalistic setup when you have Musk or such business leaders. What I wanted to highlight is that we have a lot of rules and regulations or legal amendments that simply we don't even try to use because we have a distorted new social world where we are now. And just then I think most people don't have to sacrifice or give up anything. So you can just sit back and relax. You don't have to sacrifice anything. It doesn't mean that you should travel by plane all the time. Well, everybody should give up some small things, but the things you have to give up have a good and viable alternative. So you have replacements, you have alternatives. The oil and gas industry has major subsidies, government subsidies in all countries of the world. So it is very difficult to produce and promote solar panels in this environment because this is not a market situation because it is regulated by the government. So what I want to say is that there are many challenges, but the most challenges are overconsumption and luxury are caused by a very small segment of the society, the top segment. And in this, you have the materialistic world, or a world focused on material values. Instead of this, we would need a world more focused on psychological values. So people should be told that it is good to spend time in nature but in this communication environment, I think these messages seem to be a political statement for many people, and it can be a good excuse for them to withdraw from the dialogue. And the people will say that nobody should tell me what will make me feel good. I feel good if I sit in my BMW. So, I think this equation can be changed, and so I think it's a major danger that you should not just provide lip service or just not focus too much on this kind of narrative, but say that you should focus more on your emotional and spiritual well-being to live better. So, today, the material items of the world or material values of the world, and well, we have lots of technologies that are already available that are not utilized well because they don't spend of them because governments spend on arms and they spend on money on oil and gas. Harari has a video and it said that based on some calculations, the global for the climate issue should be spent. We should spend 10% of the 2% of the GDP on the climate issue. Well, the US president called the world to spend 5% on arms, on military development. The governments will be willing to change their budget and increase the military budget to 5% of their GDP. And it was just a change achieved in a second. So, well, I just want to give you a positive message, but I just want to say that these things, these practical issues can be changed in a very short time. Well, we have technologies, we have scientific results, and well, they can be used. The major obstacles are social obstacles, political obstacles, and economic obstacles.
Minden gazdaság politikai, pedig lehetne az is társadalmi, vagy szóval, hogy lehetne úgy gondolkozni róla, hogy tudományos, de hogy ezeket az akadályokat
these obstacles
esetleg más beszéddel
can be removed if you change the language, if you say that people can buy only one plane ticket per year.
És majd akkor lehet megint röpködni mindenhova, de ezekkel a repülőkkel...
Well, the current planes, the current aviation technology, or the current automotive technology we have can be restricted somehow, or we should make public transport free of charge. And well, if your narrative says that it's a sacrifice, then it won't work. So if you make people financially interested in using public transport, they will opt for that. So I just want to tell you a story. One of my favorite posts from the recent days is that somebody wanted to fly from New York to Washington and found that there is no domestic flight, and he said that he is happy because he can take a train, and then he made a post on how much he enjoyed railway travel in the United States. Can you give us some recipes or just some idea just to make people thinking? On the one hand, money is spent not only on oil, on gas, but also on solar panels. We have this British oil company. One of their divisions produces solar panels because they want to supply energy solutions. They're always the same companies. Oil and gas companies are always involved in the manufacturing of solar panels too. So they are just the same companies.
And another interesting thing, the German politicians who voted on the close down of nuclear power stations, they went to sit on the board of gas companies. Lobby groups have bought out democracy. Without naming names, we know that there have been European countries where the energy strategy was written on the computer of an energy company. Or Poland was represented at a climate conference by the director of a coal mine. But what is even more important than this is for us to understand, how should I put it? I think, yes, the communication should be changed. We shouldn't tell people that you have to give up using car, but we should make the use of public transport free of charge, and everyone would be happy. Public municipalities pay the cost, and they collect parking fees to pay for the cost of public transport. Another thing I wanted to mention is that it's not environmental protection that we should talk about here in Europe, but it's greenwashing. We must make it clear. And of course, I agree with what you said, and it's an answer to your question. It's a clear case of greenwashing. The US food chain with the letter M, now they started to use the color green. This is greenwashing. or another supermarket chain started to use ads about green transition, but on their website there's in a submenu a short message about sustainability, but they use child labor, but they started to use recycled paper, and hooray, we saved the universe. And what's going on in Europe? The introduction of green bonds. To simplify, let me explain it in a simplified manner. There's a very polluting manufacturing company, and it started to use green bonds, and they can claim that they saved the world, but they continue the same polluting practice. But if we use environmental protection as a business tool, the market logic is that we should use as little resource to make as much profit as possible. The Green Deal in Europe was about growth. It just started a new business of business line, green business. The most important would be to face the threats and dangers of greenwashing. So the question was, what should we do then? Question, individually or collectively? Let's start with the individuals. What should we do as consumers or as citizens? Because it's not very often that we talk about people as citizens rather than consumers. And sometimes it's much easier to force the adoption of a new bill than to have an impact on the entire system as a consumer. So I think it's really important. The topic of degrowth is interesting. It's a research area to how to remove the constraint of growth, because growth causes environmental impact. We should work less. It may sound strange, but it's a message that could be sold very easily. We could work less. Yes, but you would have less money, of course. And it's not giving up. If people can choose now, I don't want to work less if this means that I will have a lower salary. But if you ask people about their future salary, would they forego an increase in their future salary in return for less work? They would perhaps say yes to that. So
minőségének, időszakának, meg egyáltalán, hogy mit tekintünk munkának, annak az újragondolása az egyértelműen része.
Thinking of our working practices, what we consider as work, and the starting and finishing times of works. And this introduces a growth constraint or the necessity to grow in our systems. But we also have to talk about the system of repaying debts. And we have to also talk about the democratization of money systems and monetary systems. And I could go on mentioning other components. I have 2 series of podcasts that I manage. If you're interested in the topic, you have the opportunity to do that if you follow my podcast. So we can contribute to all this if we convince politicians that, about the importance of talking about these issues. If I change my consumption habit, this will not have an enormous impact on the world. But if I consume in a different way, I will realize the dependencies in the system that actually take away my autonomy about changing my consumption habits. And from that moment, I can act as a citizen. And you should analyze it in your own life, at your own workplace. What are the things that you could change? What are the consumption patterns? What are the material things that you could replace with non-material things? How you could bring high quality into your relationships? I think everyone could find their own part, and we shouldn't tell people what to do. It's absolutely enough if everyone starts to think about their own behavior, whether they add to a better world or not. And one of the biggest slogans is decolonizing the imaginary. So the liberation of our imagination, this is one of the key slogans of degrowth. Yes, we can do things differently. But what is that? Let Levent respond to this question. Can everyone go in the countryside to find a rural spot and start gardening? Isn't it difficult to step out from this vicious circle? Let me just briefly answer to previous issues and then I will get here, I promise. Representation-based democracy, where people have votes and say in words. It's not very close to that. So when we are thinking about a potential new word, one of the things that we have to rethink is how we want to make decisions collectively. Another thing about greenwashing, I'm really critical about these trends, and I absolutely agree with you. But I've heard a speech from a marketing specialist, marketing expert, who started to use his knowledge to do things differently. So what he said was that we need a cultural change, and in a cultural change, it matters to think about what are the values based on which you sell things. If this will not lead you to the right thing, but it will improve things. And one more thing about foregoing or giving up things. I've just said that it's not good to do it all at once. But at the same time, and I don't think that it's contradictory, but there are things that we should give up. But this is not necessarily a tragedy. There's a visionary ecology thinker, is that from all our rules, it is only in our consumer rule where we don't want to accept the fact that we have to give up. When you're a parent, you have to give up a lot of things. So you should find ways to explain what are the things that it pays, that will pay you off. And Alexandra mentioned the importance of thinking as citizens. It's important, but when you are thinking about our action as individuals, you can't change the world as an individual. If you take this load off from your shoulder, then it will open up possibilities. How you can get involved in local action, local representation. You do something with your own garden, and you do something about your own consumption. We should reduce dramatically our consumption of processed meat. And if you do that, it's much better than if you don't do anything. This will not solve the problem of the world, of course. When you mentioned this top 10%, I'm sure that I'm part of it. I think many people among our listeners and the audience, they are part of this top 10%. And there is social injustice, that's true. But we are part of this group in society who could do that. You have a choice about your job, you have a choice about your profession, and these decisions can have a regional impact. Please hand over the mic to Christina. There's one more thing. There's a company with a blue-yellow logo. They sell boxes, various sizes of boxes. I'm sure that we don't need so many boxes. If you have a wardrobe, that's enough. 10% is interesting, yes. Perhaps if you're a viewer or part of the audience, you are a member of this 10%, and we often tend to say that we often don't admit that we are part of the problem. I'm glad that you mentioned this climate seeker problem, or climate grief and climate anxiety problem. This is my profession. I'm working with such people. There's denial, there's bargaining to this. If we did something, then from tomorrow on we would. And there's also anger when some people blame capitalism, the top 1%, and there's depression when people feel depressed, when we really are pessimistic and we can't see what we could do about this. But this is not a linear checklist. What are we grieving when we talk about climate change? If it's part of your grieving process, we are grieving our future that we were promised when we were a youth. Loss of vision, loss of future is a traumatizing loss. And this is also a collective trauma. Because if you believe that this is a real problem, then you live this. And it's the self-denial of the psychologist profession. It's not anxiety, actually. And we need totally different strategies. But if you dare to face this loss, as in the case of traumatic losses, this can take you to a post-traumatic growth, and where you can change your identity. It's not enough to change our patterns of consumption. It's the identity of a consumer that generates this growth. If you consider yourself as a consumer, then you will remain a consumer and you will keep your habits that are dictated by society. But this crisis of identity that a lot of people struggle with will take you to asking questions like, why am I here on Earth? What are my values? And if you can find these values, then this will automatically change your habits and behavior. The fact that our deep adaptation movement is criticized heavily, that we are doomsday sacked. When I was history student. This was my area of research. We are not an apocalyptic sect. Deep adaptation movement is not that. If all I'm saying is that if we dare to say that the world we live in today will soon radically change, and a lot of things that you take for granted, it will not be a question of willingness to give up, but you will simply lose it. We might continue to have petrol or diesel oil, but you won't be able to pay for it. And you will continue to have avocado, but you won't be able to buy it. I moderate group discussions that are attended by people who cannot talk about these issues within their own environment.
Hogy mondjam, szakmai értelemben, tehát, hogy itt ebben nincsen minősítés. Tehát az, hogy ahogy egy közösség fölállítja magának a normáit,
the way a community or a group establishes its norms, and they isolate people who are not adhering to these norms. But if we manage to change these community norms, then an increasing number of people will understand that it's not trendy to boast with your car or SUV. And I think this is where we can start social changes. We're running out of time. And this is the level of the individual. And at the level of community, it's totally different in a large town, large city than in a village. My recommendation is to, in our last round, we should try to talk about not solutions, because even we do not know where we will get to as society, or we won't be able to come up with major solutions. But let's try to confirm whether we should think about things in groups or adaptation things, and we will see who agree with the preppers, so the survivalists, who will have to come up with a plan B, who will survive climate cataclysms. So this is my recommendation to the admin of one of the Hungarian prepper groups. There's a misunderstanding about preppers because of a very poor documentary. Prepper group has the goal to get prepared for a large disaster. Some people say that there's an instruction about how to put together a kit that can help you survive for 72 hours. I'm talking about flood or earthquake. It takes about a week by the time rescue teams can help a given region that is struck by earthquake or flood.
Az egyéni felkészülésben nagyon egyszerű, praktikus dolgok is benne vannak, amihez még sok pénz sem kell. Egy tök triviális példát mondok, szóba kerültek a panelházak. Ahhoz aztán nem kell a világ összes pénz.
Just give you a trivial example. Just think about buildings built from prefabricated blocks. If you paint them to white, then the top part, then you can reduce increase the time until it is heated up in the event of a potential fire, or you can contact local government representatives and make your local government to develop a viable strategy against climate change or global warming. So it was not such a long time ago when you had to limit or restrict the consumption of water, the water in the Buda area, or there in New York, there was a 24-hour electricity shortage. And well, New York was simply paralyzed when there was no electricity. So such disasters can happen. In the past, in the agricultural society, people worked just 60 days a year. And while today it would be a very attractive way of working for anyone. So if you opt for non-growth or degrowth, you will have to work less. Local governments should have a strategy for drought. They would have a strategy for excessive rainfall, because now they have some contingency plans, local contingency plans, but they are not realistic. Or, well, at the level of a village, the local community can come together, and they can develop a rainwater management system or have water tanks to manage rainwater in the village. If you check it on the in the internet, and there has been some village action in the Great Plain area in Hungary, when people just came together and did something to ensure or to support rainwater drainage in the village. If European middle-class people made the decision and stopped buying shoes that were produced using slave labor in Bangladesh, then it would generate major changes. Well, in the past, CFC gas was not purchased by people because they made a decision, and it took only 1 month for the manufacturers, for the producers to change their processes and remove CFC gases from the components of their products. Well, in Hungary, we have plenty of apple, peaches, or pears produced. They can be used as an alternative to consume fruit in Hungary. Or, well, the Hungarian Urban Development Society should lobby to change construction regulations or building regulations. And new rules could be integrated into building regulations to improve the situation. Or you could take local action, and well, when people, like-minded people in a community, join forces and they start guerrilla gardening, for example. There are some initiatives existing in Hungary, and when somebody starts this, then it will serve as a model for others to follow. So people, I think, are prone to follow good examples. Or just take agricultural producers or companies. Here, they feel the impact of climate change heavily with last year's droughts, and many agricultural companies realized that they have to take immediate action, because there's been no rain in the eastern side of Hungary. Or we have to face that Hungary has a high scarcity of water, and even in this situation, people use their household water taps to wash their cars, which is really a shame. And well, here you can take local action. You can use white paint, or you can introduce local regulations to prevent people from using their household water to wash their cars. I think these processes will not be changed by the United Nations. these things will change if people will demand change locally. And we don't know how much time we have left. The first climate models were developed in the 1970s. The first Hungarian document about climate change was published in 1911. So it was more than 100 years ago, and we have not taken any meaningful action. So our climate models say that sometime between 2050 and 2100 there will be a major change, but we don't know the date exactly. For a long time we will have just small changes, and then suddenly we will have a big change. So it is just a gradual process, because all changes trigger the next change. So I wanted to make this clear, because if we are now traveling on a plane where both engines are on fire, and we are still discussing which airport we can reach, while we should already start the landing process to save as many passengers as possible. So this is where we are now. So I've been recently invited to a radio program as an expert, and then the host said that she asked, why are we threatening people with climate change? And well, the communication, the media communication about climate change is really mild and euphemistic. This is what I told the hostess, that the situation is much worse than actually communicated in the media. So what we have to understand is that this process is slow and fast at the same time, because, well, it is not like a change from Monday to Tuesday. It won't happen in a fortnight. This is a very slow and gradual process, but you can see the end of it. So it will, the disaster will come in a short time span. Well, when in history you say that the end of the Roman period has a given date, it was the end of the Roman Empire, really, but after that some processes continued and went on. So it will work similarly today. Well, some parts of the society and the economy will be destroyed. First, we won't have coffee because coffee won't be produced anymore. And well, we have to make people understand that we have to start small local changes now, so that we would be able to adapt to faster paced changes in the future. So you are a university professor. What about the academic community? Well, I have limited information about this because I'm an outsider, really. I deal with linguistic processes, so I approach these issues from a linguistic perspective. But there are articles about this, there are descriptions, and there are experiments and related publications. My article is more about activism, or it is perceived by people as activism. So communication is always done by the stakeholders. They communicate in the way they find it fit. Just back to your previous question, and well, we'll connect the two questions really. What can we do now? And it is related to the prepper movement too, and to the grief management problem. Many people feel that they will have to make a huge sacrifice, but many people are looking forward to change, and they really want change to happen from a political perspective, it seems that people want a change. They'd rather have Trump than no change at all. So I'm not sure that people will have such a high resistance. Well, the question is, who will be able to reach them? Who will be able to spur them to action? And we should change people's thinking or change what they consider really important in their lives. And I think marketing can be used to change that. So I think we should try to influence wealthy people, the top segment of society, because their behavior and their way of thinking will have a major impact on society at large. So we should introduce a marketing message that would dissuade people from buying new things, for example. And it was very important what you said about individual, community, and overall social action. And well, I think that at an individual level, I think we are helpless because the climate system is too large and the socio-economic system is too big and the processes are too powerful. I think you can have a twofold approach. First, you have to establish communities. Well, you need communities, and we already have communities within society. And we already have the mechanisms to control and to manage these communities. What can we do? I think at a macro level, I wanted to refer to the Pareto principle, where 80% of the work is done in 20% of your working time. You can use the same Pareto principle to climate change. 80% of the emission is generated by about 10% of the producers. So if 10% of those involved reduce their emission, it will have a major change, a major impact on the overall emission. And the third point I wanted to make, it was mentioned several times that 10% was mentioned, that large emitters are 10%, rich people are 10%, and well, the 9% of people who don't struggle to make a living, but are not on the top of political leadership. I mean, the urban residents who have the ability to take an action, or those who just are watching this video, who consider the things important and are willing to talk about this and think about this. And I think this segment has a major social responsibility to find their voice and communicate to the other 90% who struggle, who struggle with nepotism in the Western countries and struggle with local problems in Hungary. And if we can reach them, they will be able to have an impact or make their voices heard to the political decision makers who can really change the rules, who have the power to control, because this is just so we should make them motivated to change. I think this very small elite who control society, they are very much exposed to their voters. I think those people who are willing to think and have the ability to think have the responsibility to communicate with the other 90% of society that can make the 1% of decision makers to start change and to. I think we should give the mic to Levente if he wants to contribute, or anybody else who wants to contribute. Well, can you address that 90%? Can you communicate with that 90% of society? Well, I don't think that you should address everybody all the time. It is, but there are some things that I want to respond to. You mentioned the responsibility of marketing people and the values that we promote. So if you advertise a car highlighting the values of family, safety, etc. So I think marketing has a major responsibility, but these are not the. But there is major marketing research about this. Alexandra's organization has research about autonomy. So, and what I want to stress, and it is related to adaptation, mitigation, and the way to prepare for the future is the natural environment. Because today species are destroyed and they die out, which is a major loss, not only for the future, but also for the present. And it is important to discuss these issues, not only in view to the future, but also in view to the present, because we are already destroying our natural environment. And when we talk about hope and we talk about a bleak future, we very often, we don't even mention what we should do currently, what we should do in the present to change the situation. And well, as far as adaptation is concerned, the natural environment is the only safety net we have to protect ourselves. If we do that, then we will have an environment where people can survive in the long run, that can mitigate the impact of drought, that may mitigate the impact of excessive rainfall. Well, planting trees, I think, is one of the false messages used by the fossil industry. So what I want to say that we should protect the natural habitats we have, the natural environment. We have to rethink our approach to nature, and it will create a win-win situation both for us and for the environment. And I think the future is not settled yet. So we have many potential outcomes for the future. And well, future is an open-ended story. And well, we have several options, but we don't know what is going to happen. So for this reason, we should focus more on the present than on the future. And this is where we should focus our communication on. We should not focus on the distant future, but focus on the present and take radical action now in terms of technology, in terms of social innovation, and take action now. And this is what can give people hope. If we start doing, then people will see that their actions are working. And I think this is the major point that we have to achieve. So I'm very sorry, but I have to close the roundtable. I can give you the mic and say one more sentence to close. So in 20 or 30 years from now, so what do you think is going to happen? If somebody tells me what is going to happen in 10 years and knows what is the solution to problems that will emerge in 10 years' time, you shouldn't listen to them. So I think this is, I agree. So climate change is not just a checklist. Even within Hungary, there's been recently an article that the impact of climate change will be different for the different towns and villages. So it will be a very complex and diverse situation. It all depends on us. This is what I want to say. I don't think that we don't have the same future scenario for all of us. So there will be many different scenarios for different people. I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years now, but that we shouldn't talk about climate change as a future phenomena, because on the Great Plain or in Somogy County, in my village, we already see the impacts of climate change, and we talk about things in 10 years from now, the future impact of climate change or future adaptation. I think this is just a denial of present issues. If you have a look around in the world today, you see many signs of destruction, but we just don't feel it directly on your skin. And this is why it is very important to return to the values and start living to prevent negative scenarios. And you won't be able to do it alone by yourself. Our grandparents were preppers. They had huge stockpiles in their pantries, where there were community preppers rather than individual preppers, and this kind of prepping makes sense. I think small communities and bigger communities are the way of the future. I want to thank our panelists for the discussion of the past 2 years. Thank you for coming. Krisztina Csapó, Alexandra Kövecs, Bálint Forgács, Levente Pribéli, Gábor Vassáros. And well, Károly Nagy, I was the moderator of the past 2 hours. Thank you for your attention.